A lot of questions about certain movements that are causing people some trouble. Trouble meaning usually causing some kind of back pain or soreness afterward. Most of these exercises, not surprisingly, in the hinge family of movements. So in phase 2 of Oh My God, there's the Pendlay Row, and also there is a Romanian deadlift, and also the sumo deadlift, though there's spins on it, but anyway, they're all hinges. And so here's some tips that might help you, hopefully, be more successful. So I'm gonna look at the Barbell Pen Leg Row first. I like the Pendlay Row because it actually can be really helpful for people to learn how to row from their lats without lifting their body up. Because a lot of times when people are doing barbell bent rows, they might start here, but they kind of gradually come up higher and higher. You see where my shoulders are? It makes it harder, first of all, because you're moving the bar further, but you're also accessing less of your lats as you do so. People who have a history of back pain are reluctant to bend over because it feels more vulnerable here. But the row is so important because it's an isometric exercise for your lower back, meaning that it actually, this is the point, right? It puts you in the place where you, I don't want to say the danger zone, but the most dangerous, not dangerous, damn it, I didn't want to say that, vulnerable place of the deadlift too, right? And so when people are deadlifting and they feel it in their back, not always, but often it means that they're doing something like this, lifting from their back, or usually, I will say, even more commonly, I don't know where I say that, even more commonly right now, I'm seeing more often people are losing it at the descent. Either way, you see I'm loading my back there, right? So with the Pendlay Row, you're basically just resetting the barbell down every single time. So you will know if you're lifting this way if it's not a smooth landing, so to speak. So one thing I like to use for the hinge is some kind of feedback for your body to be able to tell whether or not you're in a hinge. People have a really hard time determining if it's their hips that's moving backwards. Usually it's not. It's either their chest, and you can see if my hips aren't moving, I'm moving from my lumbar spine there, right? Or they turn it into a squat, in which case I'm here, right? But often what happens there is people will arch their back, right? And when your knees are pushed forward like this, not in a hinge, you push the bar away from you. So even if your back isn't loaded out the gates, if your knees come forward, you do ultimately still load your back. So I'm using a regular 45-pound barbell, so high bar. And I like using power bars for these because of the knurling in the center. Again, you're trying to figure out where you are in space to make you more successful in the lift. So with the Pendlay Row, I put the arches of my feet, midfoot, around that center knurling of this power bar. And I'm actually going to back up a little bit so that my shins are not quite touching, or calves rather, this plyo box, but I can feel it behind me. The reason for that, and we kind of like feel the temperature, whatever, if I lock out and do this, I'll feel it, right? I'll feel the box behind me, and also if I squat, I'll feel myself move away from it, right? So you're just giving your body some ways that it can help you figure out where you are in space, right? So getting my feet midfoot around that center knurling, so about hip width apart. And then I personally like a wider grip. It feels better on my shoulders with all sorts of bent rows, but you know, just figure it out. Basically, you want it just to be a little wider than shoulder width, but you know, if it doesn't feel good, and you're like, I feel a little cramped, I should go wider, just go wider. So here, other huge mistake people make in the deadlift, which is on par with what I just said, is that they keep their shoulders forward. And when you're there, you have no option. You're going to lift with your back. So with any kind of deadlift or row, I'm checking because I don't want to say any, but I think it's pretty much true. Yeah, even with like kettlebell swings and stuff, obviously your shoulders aren't going to be over the weight, but what we want with the barbell is we want the shoulders to be over the bar before ascent. So if you're here, that's no good. That's why also in the deadlift, whether it's conventional or sumo, it really helps to pull the bar against you, right? So that it will not prevent, but make it less likely that you will initiate by doing stripper deadlift. Sexy? Not really, because you're gonna walk like a jackass for a couple weeks after doing it too much. Don't ask me how I know. Okay, so holding onto the bar's over my midfoot. I'm gonna scooch back a little bit so I can feel this plyo box directly behind me. Sit back. See how I loaded my lats by rotating, right? This is not lats, right? So I'm thinking about snapping the bar like that, and you could hear that little click into the plates. You want the same thing with the deadlift. That's taking slack out of the bar. No bent wrists and dumb shit like that. You're trying to create hooks with your hands. So here, take a big breath, get your knees out of the way of the bar. See how my shoulders are over the bar the whole time? Yes. So if your knees are going forward, all sorts of shit like this, whatever, the key is to go very light. So that means that for some people, you're not going to use a barbell right away. The barbell can be really helpful if you can find a 15-kilo bar and maybe even some 5-pound bumpers. That's a good place to start. I'm notoriously, well, I say all the time, of all the things I hate training, it's like back and rows and stuff. So I've come a long way with the bent row. Pendlay is one of my favorite because, again, it helps me learn where I am in space so effectively. But I don't go heavy at all because I feel like I lose form very, very quickly. So when I'm doing Pendlay Row, I will literally do maybe like 20 to 30 pounds more than this, which I mean is mostly what most of my clients are doing, if not more. I don't care. It's not about that. I don't give a fuck. Whatever. So if you want to use kettlebells though, that would be another alternative. And there's 2 ways that I will recommend that you do this. So if you wanted it to be like a Pendlay row, I would straddle the bells. So I also like to use a line on the floor. I just pretend I'm on a line because again, that helps you learn where you are in space and it also gives you something to aim for, right? With the Pendlay row, you don't have the bar against you like you should in a deadlift. So that can kind of throw you too. You're not knowing exactly where your shoulders are in space. This way, if I put the bells between the arches of my feet and I have the line of the arches of my feet and the center of those bells on that line, then I know where I'm aiming for every single time. The wider stance can also be helpful if you're taller. So without further ado, oh yeah, and the neutral grip. So when your palms are facing each other, it's an easier way to row for most people than this, which has a lot of problems for people, or gives people a lot of problems. Self-included, but me and row, we've come a long way. All right, so I'm gonna hinge my hips back, right? So pretend that box is there, use it if you need to, though you're gonna need a little more distance, because anyway. So see again, I'm setting up so that my shoulders are over the handles, right? Directly over my hands that are hooks and directly over the center of the bell. And just like the barbell, I'm gonna brace. Okay? So exact same movement. One other alternative that can make it even easier for you and easier for your back is to do alternating with the kettlebells. I do like kettlebells better than dumbbells because you can actually reach them from the floor. Dumbbells, don't fuck with dumbbells with this, but if you're still using really light weights and you're not as short as I am, you can elevate the kettlebells with like a plate or something, like a 45-pound plate, so that you don't have to reach down like this, right? Give yourself a fighting chance. Okay, so one at a time, hinge, right? So I'm also keeping my shins in line with the bells, right? My knees aren't crossing forward and I'm not doing this. So if you go one at a time, getting the shoulders over the bell. So I'm working on keeping that one side stable and not rotating. And I'm trying to pull deeply. I'm trying to get my thumbs into my armpits. So there's a lot of different ways that you can practice the row. It seems so simple, but it is actually one of the trickiest movements out there. But it's also one of the most important, not only for working your upper back, lats, keeping your elbows, wrists happy, all that shit, but also your lower back. If your lower back hurts, it's because it's weak. The kettlebell isn't coming to life and fucking with you, your back is weak. The best way to mitigate back pain, I'm not a doctor, but come on, it's a no-brainer. Get your back strong. If you can't do these movements without pain, figure it out, because otherwise it's not gonna get better. Go to any massage therapist, any dry needling, whatever. That's to stop the pain momentarily. Your job is to strengthen it at that point, so you don't have to live like that. My name's Cars.